Right, hello world. Just excuse this rather weird angle. I've just shifted a table full of CDs and other sorts of rubbish out of the way, just so that I didn't have to look at it while I made this video. I couldn't be bothered to tidy it up. Right, I just want to try and debunk a few hi-fi myths. Now, what I'm going to say is actually blindingly obvious, but it's very easy to lose sight of the blindingly obvious, okay? And it applies not only to hi-fi or loudspeakers, which are going to be the main focus of my little talk today, but also it applies to anything that you want to buy, okay? And most of us would kind of say that we don't believe hype, okay? We know that when we walk into the supermarket and we find that processed ready meal, we know that the thing that says means low fat means high artificial sugars, which will give you diabetes. Do you know what I mean? So, you know, we can sort of weigh these things up ourselves, okay? It's not quite so easy to do that in the hi-fi world, okay? And although I have an awful lot of respect for genuine hi-fi manufacturers, people that sell you plastic boxes, or I don't know, they might as well be selling oranges, but within the sort of the small company, good reputation kind of hi-fi world, I have an awful lot of respect for them. So what I'm saying here is not in any way sort of taking away from the products themselves, or the reputation, or the knowledge of those engineers, okay? But these people have a marketing department, and it's the marketing departments that irritate me, okay? Now, the thing that prompted me to make this video was that I went onto Audio T's website, because I like Audio T. They're a good shop, okay? And on the homepage, there were links to 2 YouTube videos made by sort of very well-respected manufacturers, okay? I'll tell you the names of the companies, because they are brilliant companies, and again, the products, lovely, okay? The claims made about them, not quite so, okay? The loudspeaker companies were PMC and KEF, okay? They're both British loudspeaker companies that make for a very specialised market, and they also make for the general audiophile as well, okay? In particular, PMC are a very highbrow company, okay? Their loudspeakers don't fit into the budgets of most ordinary people, in terms of even if you've got the money, a lot of people wouldn't necessarily feel that they had the kind of interest or the desire to spend the kinds of money that they're after on their speakers, okay? But they are extremely good, and I would well advise anybody to have a listen to them, even though I haven't myself. That's something that I've got to do, okay? Before I die, I want to hear a pair of PMC Fact 8s, because I'm sure they're brilliant, okay? Right, but looking at both of the videos, you would have thought that they were selling exactly the same product. They're clearly not, okay? KEF were selling, in this video, their new... I'll just move this out of the way because I forget model numbers. Their new LS50 speakers, okay? Their LS50 speakers hark back to the days when KEF had a very strong connection to the BBC, and they made the speakers that they used in BBC studios. Okay, and guess what? The advert for them just laid that on very, very thickly. Along with, imagine hearing the same sound that the artist intended in the studio. Boom, boom. Right, okay. Then we have a lot of professional sound engineers, all with their LS50 speakers, you know, and the great big consoles in front of them with these meters going up and down, and oh, isn't it scientific and isn't it fabulous? And those must sound fabulous in my home because they're used by the BBC and they're used by blah, 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 blah. Okay, right. Go to KEF, not KEF, PMC, beg your pardon. Okay, PMC have the honour, and it really is an honour, okay, of having this huge monitor speakers installed in many recording studios throughout the world. Okay, if you watched an advert for B&W, Bowers and Wilkins, they will tell you exactly the same because their speakers are also used in many studios, including Abbey Road. Okay, and you do hear B&W using their Abbey Road connections, but that's a slight digression, but it will amount to the same thing. Okay, so we have then quite a long spiel really about how fabulous certain studio engineers have found using these PMC speakers. They're big, what we call near field monitors. In other words, they tend to be less room dependent. You can have them right up close to you. You will hear, you know, a very neutral sound. Okay, they're probably not appropriate for use in the home. Okay, but they are trying to sell you by the fact that they're advertising on YouTube, and that, you know, that they have a home range as well of speakers. What they're trying to tell you basically is that if you play these speakers, or if you buy their smaller range of speakers, you're getting this kind of direct spiritual link, as it were, to what was going on in the recording studio. Okay, all right. So let's first of all debunk this hearing the album exactly as the artist intended. Okay, one of PMC's claims to fame is that their monitors were used to master Amy Winehouse's Back to Black album. Okay, now Amy Winehouse is someone I can take or leave. I don't doubt that she was very talented, and yeah, it's a sad loss and all that sort of thing, but I never really got on with her music, and to be fair, I never liked the mastering of that album. Okay, so it means nothing to me. Okay, but okay, the artist has a huge amount of pressure. The artist, in quotes, has to sell their music. Okay, the way that they sell their music is by it's not only judged by studio engineers, because studio engineers themselves are under a lot of pressure. Okay, you can, you know, I've watched interviews with, you know, a number of them, and they will tell you that this loudness war thing, God, he's going on about the loudness war thing, but you know, this loudness war thing means that unless they master to a level that they would consider as unacceptably loud, clips unacceptably, they will not get a job. Okay, they don't like it any more than we do as listeners. Okay, all right, so as the artist intended, what is actually coming out on that CD or that vinyl record quite often as well is not what the artist intended, because the artist would include that studio engineer as well, who probably does not want to master to those standards. Okay, all right, now you know, that's a kind of, you know, an nth of this as the artist intended kind of kind of myth. But if you look back, okay, and I've probably spoken about this innumerable times on YouTube as well. The artist probably recorded in a studio. If it's a classical kind of thing, they recorded in some sort of concert hall, something like that. Okay. The artist intended you to hear it in that space, probably. This is one side of the argument. Okay, and so therefore, what goes on record is what's being is kind of an impression of what it's like in that space. Okay, if you listen to something like the Freewheeling Bob Dylan, or even Blonde on Blonde by Bob Dylan, which has got quite a large sort of band with him as well, you will you'll hear a recording that is so lifelike in terms of that space that it beggars belief. Even 50 years later, playing the Freewheeling Bob Dylan with Bob Dylan and his guitar and his harmonica and maybe one or two other extra guitars or whatever, it's just magical. It's absolutely magical. It's right in that space. Okay. However, in your home, it ain't gonna sound like that. It really ain't gonna sound. All you will get is an impression. Okay. As I've said, that impression is truly magical on an album like Dylan. Okay. And the record company CBS really stood by this theory of, let's capture as much of the recording space as we can. Okay. In your home, it will sound beautiful. It will sound wonderful. It will never sound exactly like the space that it was recorded in. Okay. So, again, what the artist intended, you can take it or leave it, really, can't you? It will never sound like that. You will never get the Albert Hall into your lounge. Okay. Now, as kind of technology became more advanced, there were new problems that were kind of introduced. Okay. And there were record companies in particular that really didn't go for this in your space for the reason that I've said. It will never sound like the Albert Hall in your lounge. Okay. If it sounded like you had a symphony orchestra in your living room, you would not want to be in your living room. Your neighbours would not want to be in your street. Okay. Because it would sound terrible. Okay. All right. So all you can get is this impression. Okay. All right. So to counter that, there were other record companies, RCA, I believe in particular, that kind of went for, well, okay, if that's not going to be an acceptable thing, then we can kind of do what we like. We can kind of, create whatever effects we like or whatever, and not worry about whether or not it sounds like, the Abbey Road studio in their living room, because it's not going to sound like that. Okay. And as I say, advances in technology kind of added to, the RCA kind of viewpoint. Okay. To get a maybe 6-piece band to sound like they're recording in a studio, they have to really be playing together. Okay, they have to have this kind of communication with one another. They have to be able to see one another, and it makes for an engineer's nightmare. Okay, the engineer's nightmare being that as more and more tracks were sort of crammed onto the same width of recording tape, because at the beginning of the 60s, studios were just moving from 2-track to 4-track. Okay, but if you've got an inch of tape, I'm not sure how wide studio tape is, but let's pretend it's an inch. okay, then you've got 1/2 inch for each track. Okay, it means you can pack a good amount of signal onto each track and get quite a powerful recording. That's why Please Please Me is such a powerful recording. Okay, it doesn't matter whether you listen to stereo or mono. It's a really powerful recording, really packs a punch. The reason why it packs a punch is basically because they were able to get a really healthy signal onto wide tape to start with, okay? If you take the same width, okay, and by kind of 1963, the Beatles were using 4-track towards the end of it. I think I Want to Hold Your Hand was the first single that used 4-track on it, but you're then using 1/4 of the width of that same tape, say 1/4 of an inch. You can't pack quite such a healthy signal onto it, okay? By the late 60s, we were on 8-track, okay, and again, you're diminishing the quality of the signal, okay? By the early 70s, we were on 16 and 24-track tape, okay? 16 and 24-track, in particular 24-track tape, because it's each track is even thinner, okay? Because you're getting the tape width as wide as is practicable, but the tape width, but for each track, then they've got a more narrow track and less healthy signal to be able to sort of to get onto each track, okay? Not only that, but the tracks bled. So if you had a band playing live in the studio, recording onto 24-track, then instruments would bleed from one track to another. That meant, for example, that if the guitar balance wasn't quite loud enough, but the drums were, thank you very much, maybe the hi-hat cymbal, if the hi-hat cymbal has bled into the guitar track, and you need to turn the guitar up, you're also turning up a little bit of the hi-hat cymbal as well, okay, which might not necessarily be what they wanted, okay? And so to counter that, they tried to close mic everything as much as possible. When you put a microphone close to an amplifier, close to a drum kit, close to an instrument, it stops sounding like it was sounding in that studio and starts sounding like something that's very close to you, okay? And then they can add whatever reverb, they can do that in post, okay? A bit like if you take a photograph and the exposure is not quite correct, then you can do that on Photoshop, okay? And that's essentially what they're doing, okay? Musicians didn't like it because what it meant, quite often, instruments were plugged directly into the mixing desk, okay? John Bonham, who was the drummer with Led Zeppelin, threatened to throw his drumsticks at anybody that got too close to his drum kit with their microphones, okay? If you listen to, I can't remember the title. What's the song that goes? That's got an incredibly powerful set of drums on there. I know, because the RP8 will tell me that. Okay, it's incredibly powerful sound, and the reason why is because the microphones were, very, very far away, and you've got all that reverberance as well. Okay, if you're getting microphones up really close, if you're plugging guitars directly into a desk, suddenly the way that the band are recording is not this kind of close-knit, we can all see one another, we can all hear what it sounds like because we've got the sound of this studio in our cans, okay? And suddenly it becomes a really difficult way for bands to record. They hated it, okay? It's probably never really been solved, this issue, but it is it kind of, all I'm trying to do by telling you this story is just to say that, there's a lot of conflict between what is possible, what artists intended, what engineers can engineer, and what marketers want, okay? All right. If I were to take back, my SoundCloud songs, okay, and take them to a record company executive, Universal Records, as it is now, because there's basically only one record company now. Okay, if I were to take that to Universal and say release that, they'd say it's not loud enough. Okay, so if I took it to someone and said, well, look, I don't want it to be loud. Okay, I want it to maybe pack a little bit more punch than it does, but I don't want it to be loud. I don't care if the latest number by, I don't know who's modern these days, but let's say it's Semi-Precious Weapons. I don't care if their record's louder than mine. Okay, and the engineer says, okay, right, we'll do it how you want, bum, 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 bum. The engineer is not going to work next week. Do you know what I mean? So, you're not getting what the artist intended. Okay, there are too many variables. Okay, so all you can do is try and maintain a level head. Okay, hi-fi magazines, there are one or two good ones, but by and large hi-fi magazines are there to sell product. Okay, knowing that they're there to help sell product means that you're kind of forewarned, and forewarned is forearmed, okay, that what they're going to try and sell you is biased in some way. Okay, there's a certain magazine that likes to give out 5-star reviews to everything, and yeah, I'm just as egotistical as everyone else. I love it that the LXR, my lovely amplifier down here, I love it that this magazine gave it a 5-star review. Okay, I can take that on board and say, right, well, it can't be all that bad. Okay, that's all I can do. Okay, I can look round, I can see other people's reviews, and if other people kind of give that, a kind of thumbs up as well, then I can go to the hi-fi shop and I can hear it myself, and I can say, right, well, actually, yeah, I can weigh it up myself, and it's not a waste of time then going to listen to it. Okay, you do have to beware the hi-fi magazines that just want to sell you mass-marketed Japanese product. Okay. On the other hand, you have to beware the magazine which all it wants to sell you is high lifestyle, basically 5-figure sum hi-fi equipment. Okay, because for most of us, we don't live like that. Okay. For most of us, being able to, upgrade our hi-fis once in 10 years, like I've done, or once over a 10-year period, like I've done, is an absolute luxury. But we still, even buying the whole lot, you're not spending 5-figure, sums, 5 or 6-figure sums. Okay, and because you get this kind of snobbery, you've got to kind of go somewhere in the middle. Okay, by all means, check these things out. Okay, but bear in mind that there are certain magazines which tout the ultra high end. There are certain magazines which tout the mass market and will also try and sell you tellies and everything else. Probably tellies that they haven't even watched. And then you've got this sort of moderate area in between. Okay. I will tell you, because I like them, okay, and because I'm not being paid by anybody, I just do this because I get bored sometimes. I will tell you that Hi-Fi World is probably the best UK magazine, okay? So, yeah, kind of, be aware of that. Take manufacturers' claims, even highly respected manufacturers' claims, with a pinch of salt. Okay, the inference that PMC were making in their video was that if you and I've kind of repeated it again, but I'll say it. Okay, if you buy our lowest price, it's not that particularly low, by the way, but our lowest priced stand mounting speaker, and play it in your 12 by 15 lounge, I've got to put my blinking password in again, it will sound just as wonderful as our studio monitors, and anything that you play through those speakers will sound just like that. Of course it won't. Of course it won't. How much amplification were they using? Do you know what I mean? What CD player were they weren't really using a CD player? So what were they using to play back their mixes on? Do you know what I mean? It's a total fallacy, okay? It doesn't work, okay? All you can take from that is PMC have a huge amount of experience. They make products which are world renowned, okay? If they can manufacture a monitor that is used by Amy Winehouse, then their smaller speakers will be quite good, okay? Likewise with the BBC, okay? Sorry, the BBC and Kef's connections with their LS50 speakers, okay? Which I don't doubt sound lovely, okay? They're all, pretty much, I think PMC and Kef also have connections somewhere along the line, it's this philosophy, that is, their design philosophy and their sonic philosophy that is, pretty much, similar and very sound. It has to be said, okay? The products themselves, I believe, are okay, okay? I do not believe in the marketing, okay? And just as I'm not impressed really by the mastering on Amy Winehouse's Back to Black LP, and I don't particularly like Amy Winehouse, so it doesn't bother me, okay? You've got to go in, and your ears will tell you something different from mine, okay? There is such a thing, or the hi-fi magazines will believe you to believe that, and so will the manufacturers as well, that there is such a thing as a trained listener, okay? They know what to look out for, okay? And, again, even if you're in a position to spend £100,000 on a preamp and another £100,000 on a monoblock and another £100,000 on the other monoblock that you need, so £300,000 worth of amplification, which is perfectly, it's perfectly doable. You can go and do it if you've got that money, but you're not necessarily going to be in that position and be able to say, oh, would I even know what to look for? Yes, you would, okay? Although trained listeners exist, that is not to belittle any other person, okay? Because these things do sound different. There are umpteen variables that will make things sound different. From the cable that's used to connect the components together, from the cable that's used to run from the amplifier to the speakers themselves, to the components that are feeding it with, to the room that you're in particular the room that you're in, they'll all sound different. And all you can do is go and listen and hear it yourself, preferably before you've laid any money out, okay, in as near to identical conditions as you can get, okay? And your ears will tell you, do these things sound nice? Will these things suit my home? Okay, I'm talking about sonic wise to start with. Yes, you don't want to take an ugly pair of things home. Are these things well made? If you tap them, do they sound like hollow boxes? If they sound like hollow boxes, leave them alone. Okay? Can you pick them up with one hand? If you can, they're not likely to sound very good. I'm talking speakers here, but if you can pick up a speaker with one hand, it's not a particularly well made, particularly hi-fi speaker. Okay? Good speakers, by and large, are large and they are heavy. Okay? Again, with stand mount speakers, you can get some stand mount speakers that are basically a cube, okay, with one driver in, okay, to cater for the bass, mid-range and treble, okay, and really not much else. not even a crossover in there. Okay, they're incredibly difficult to position. Okay, the smaller the speaker it is, the harder it is to position it in your lounge somewhere and to be able to get the best out of that speaker. Okay, they're harder to drive for amplifiers. They need more power from an amplifier to drive. Okay, so you are best going for a slightly larger, slightly heavier speaker. Okay, and if necessary, turn it down a little bit when you know, because yeah, you will get an issue with bass. You'll have an issue with how on earth do I get any bass out of a tiny floor stander, out of a tiny stand mounter. You'll have an issue with how do I control that bass if you're like me and you've got a slightly larger speaker now. My RS5s are larger than my R3s. You'll have an issue with how do I control the bass, okay? Which I'm going through now, okay? I need to think very carefully about how I solve it, or if I solve it, okay? The main thing I can do really is just be considerate and turn it down, okay? It's absolutely stunning. These RS3s are RS5s, absolutely stunning loudspeakers made by Riga, okay? Riga, who don't make glossy adverts for YouTube and and for hi-fi stores to display on their websites, but Riga, who who will do their own blinding with science. I don't doubt that they will do their own blinding with science. As I've said before, I do not understand half the science that they're explaining on their website. Okay, and this, while we're at Riga, and I love Riga, I do love them. I've spent, over the last 15 years or so, I've spent a lot of money on Riga products, and I love them, and I will tweet them out, and I will YouTube them out, and everything else. But on the Riga website, one of the things that I like doing is looking at that. For each product, they have like a list of technical specifications. They have a gallery with photos of them taken from different angles. They also have this thing that says complementary components. Okay, now that can be a guide, but it is not a Bible. Okay, it is a guide. Okay, I would argue that the Bible isn't even a Bible. It's a guide. But there you go. It's sorry, I don't want to get loads of religious freaks coming in to me. Right, looking at these complementary components, if you look at the Isis and Osiris CD amplifier thing, you will probably find they do change their website regularly. In fact, actually, what I'm going to do, I'll still talk to you, but I'm just going to move this screen out of the way. I'm going to go onto Riga's website and I'm going to find the Isis and Osiris and just check my facts here, okay? All right, I've normally done this before, okay? So what am I doing? www.riga.co.uk, voila! And here openeth the Riga website. Go down to product range. We're going to look at amplifiers. We'll look at amplifiers and see what they... Right, so here's the Riga Osiris. Opening now, okay? Complementary components, okay? Right, well, thank God. Thank God. Basically, they're saying that they have made their Riga Osiris amplifier to work well with either the Isis CD player or the Valve Isis CD player, okay? And they're complementary prices as well, okay? Let's go to the speaker range. Loudspeakers. Alright. They still make the Riga RS10s. They're, technically speaking, they're part of, the last decade's range. Let's have a look at complementary components here. Aha, what have we got? Yeah, it's exactly as I thought. Okay, the Illicit R amplifier, the Osiris amplifier, the Isis CD player, the Valve Isis CD player, the RP10 turntable. Okay, and that's to be expected because the RS10 speakers are top of the range, and so You know, in particular, the Osiris amplifier and both of those CD players and the turntable they've chosen are top of the range hi-fi components to go with it, or top of Riga's range hi-fi components to go with it. The Illicit R is top of their consumer range. Okay, their reference range is, you know, substantially more expensive. Okay, right. Take my room here, people. Okay, now I know how fabulous that Isis and Osiris amplifier and CD player combination is. I've heard it. It's lovely. Okay, if I were to put it in here with RS10 loudspeakers, I would be an absolute nutcase. Okay, it ain't gonna sound as fabulous with those speakers. Why? Because their bass drivers are absolutely humongous, and you know, they're too big for my wee room here. Okay, they don't have any kind of breathing space, so what will happen is that bass waves will not have any room to develop. Where a particular recording, such as maybe, you know, heavy hip hop or something like that, you know, pumps out really, really powerful bass. I'm thinking of Kendrick Lamar in particular, and Kanye West in particular, where, you know, that bass is pumping out, you know, with a huge amount of power behind it. All you'll do is you'll hear a very uneven kind of response there. Okay, so, you know, again, being blinded by marketing, use your brain. Okay, slightly smaller speakers, people. It's really simple, you know, RX3s, RX5s perhaps, but you know, that's a more realistic component to go with that. Okay, so from the marketing point of view, yeah, top of the range speakers, top of the range components, whoa. But actually, brain. Okay, all right, go and listen to them. What will they sound like in my home? Do I like them? That's all you need to worry about. Okay, you don't need to worry about whether or not it was the sound that the artist intended. That does not happen. It will not happen. Okay, just believe me, it will not happen. What will it not? It won't happen. All right, and from there I will leave you. Okay, enjoy the twaddle that that you read and hear, but you know, if you're in the market to spend some money, then use your brain first and foremost, and then use these things as guides. Okay, coming back to the magazines before I go quickly, one of the things I notice is that once you've read a super test of maybe 6 amplifiers or 6 pairs of speakers or whatever, you will have forgotten, because you know they blurble, and you will have forgotten what they've said about amplifier number 1 by the time that you've got to amplifier number 3. Okay, you'll be thinking, my God, how many more pages of this article do I need to actually read before I've finished it and before I get to their conclusions? Okay, use them as a guide. Use them as a guide. They are not definitive. Okay, there is an agenda which they are following. Okay, it's fine if you understand what their agenda is, and by and large it's to sell you a product. Okay, you will find that very, very few amplifiers or hi-fi components will ever get less than 4 out of 5. If they do, there's usually a qualifying thing. Okay, they will never, you know, plonk a 1-star product in front of you unless some manufacturer has thoroughly irked them, in which case they'll just slag your product off regardless of. Okay, and you know and so you know it's agenda. Go and listen. Okay, all right, see you later, bye.